Hello, everyone. Just wait another couple of minutes. Hi, Trish.
Hello.
Great to see so many people, especially here in Perth, where I know it's like 10 a.m. Queensland time, but it's bang on 8 o'clock Perth time.
Right.
Hi, George. Hey, Mike. Okay, we've got 15 people here. We had 22 RSVPs, which is great to see for our first webinar of the year. Just leave it till 8:02 and then we can kick things off. Just letting everybody know that the recording has started for this and there is a transcription as well. All right, so it's 8:02, so we'll get started. So welcome everybody to our first NAEEA webinar on self-efficacy for our webinar series for 2025. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the countries that we are meeting on today. I acknowledge the traditional custodians and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to any Torres Strait Islander and Aboriginal people with us in the webinar today, and recognise that all these countries have been places of learning. I am coming to you from Wajak Noongar Budja today in the beautiful hills of Mundaring, where it's starting to cool down. And so I hope that you all have nice, comfy, beautiful weather for our webinar today. So just a few little housekeeping and information bits. So this webinar is brought to you by the self-efficacy group for this particular delivery, and we have a self-efficacy group is one of the many SIGs that we have as part of NAEEA. If you are not a NAEEA member, I encourage you to be a NAEEA member because NAEEA is fabulous and it's a great community of enabling educators across Australia. We do some great projects together. So benefits membership, you can participate in a special interest group, otherwise known as a SIG. You get regular updates on the sector and professional development opportunities. There's a new grants project that we're working on, and we have biannual conferences as well. So here is a list of our many, many SIGs that we have. I'm a member of the self-efficacy SIG as well as the mental health SIG too, but we have SIGs that span across pretty much all elements of enabling. So there's one for everyone, and they're really great opportunities to network in the areas that you're passionate about within enabling. So our protocols for the webinar, please keep your mic off if you're not speaking. The chat is open to post questions and comments, and there'll be a Q&A at the end. This session is recorded and will be shared via the NAEEA socials and on our website as well. And so the socials are our LinkedIn, our X account, and I think we actually have a LinkedIn group as well as a page. So you'll see them up there. So as I mentioned, our first webinar is on self-efficacy. So it's academic self-efficacy, a perspective in duality. And it is brought to you today by Rob and Trish Whannell, who I must say I'm a bit of a fangirl of. I have quoted you in multiple papers. So I was a bit excited to be your host today. I'm Dr. Angela Jones. I'm a member of the NAEEA Executive. I'm on many SIGs, and I'm Senior Lecturer in Access and Equity at Edith Cowan University. So I'm really grateful for Rob and Trish, who come from University of New England. Rob is Pathways Coordinator there, and Trish, you were teaching to the program. So you have a long history in enabling, which are very well respected. So it's very exciting to have you with us today. And Rob, I will hand it back over to you to take control and do your thing.
Thank you very much. Now, just to give you an indication, Patricia and I started in enabling back in 2006 at the University of the Sunshine Coast. So it's been a while. Now, the purpose of today, just to give you a quick overview, we're just going to have a look at what academic self-efficacy is. Now, because this is a special interest group, I'm sure that many of you are aware of this. But we're going to have a look at what the definition for it has been over time. We're then going to look at some experiences that students can have that enhance academic self-efficacy. We're going to change strategy. Usually when you see self-efficacy talked about, it's always talked about in terms of the students, what they need, how it's about their belief systems, that sort of stuff, their confidence. What we're going to do is to take a slightly different strategy today, and we're going to look at what the educator, or in our case, the academics, might do to actually enhance the students' academic self-efficacy. And then we're going to have a look at the educator identity and beliefs and attitudes that are going to support the person as they as they engage in that andragogy, which is no simple thing if you're going to do it for an extended period of time. Then I'll do those first bit. That's all the theoretical side of things. Then I'm going to pass over to Trish, and she's going to have a look at, just to show you some of the things that she does in ENAB 101 to illustrate how does her way of trying to put this into practice. And before we go on, I'd like to tell you, last trimester, her student feedback on teaching in the unit, she got 5 out of 5. I have never gotten 5 out of 5, and it made me spew. So I'll be listening attentively, mark my words. Okay, first of all, just a generic description of what academic self-efficacy is. All right, we understand it's the individual's belief in their capacity to perform academically, and it's derived largely from their understanding of their current competencies, which may be accurate or not, and it's based largely on past experience and what happened at the time in the past when they were demonstrating these things. Now, it's particularly useful in when you're encountering unfamiliar tasks. It's easy to be confident and self-efficacious when you're doing the same thing over and over again. But when you get into unusual or different situations, that's where this really comes to the fore. And if you think about what we're engaged in, trying to get enabling students ready for university, that's the area we're in. So we are challenging these people in an unfamiliar situation. So that's why academic self-efficacy is so important to enabling students, because it's all new, generally. Now, a few definitions over time. We have to start with Bandura, I should say, from 1977. That's how he described it. Expectations of personal mastery affect both initiation and persistence of coping behaviour, and the strength of their convictions and their own effectiveness is likely to affect whether they will even try. So we're at the stage in T1 here where we do an automatic withdrawal of people who haven't engaged, and out of the, you normally get 20, 30% who will enrol, take a look and run. That's largely, in my view, based on that second part of that statement. We now go forward to 2014. Sharma and Nasser described it as confidence in one's ability to organise, execute and regulate performance to attain designated types of performances. If we then go through to 2022, we have these folks who describe it as a dynamic motivational belief that influences the goals we set and how hard we persist and the amount of work we employ. And they describe it also as being crucial to motivation and achievement. Now, the thing is, if you look at these definitions across an extremely long period of time, like this was 1977 to now is nearly 50 years, essentially the key takeaway from this is that the construct of academic self-efficacy really hasn't changed. Now, what that says about an academic theory, particularly in education, is that it's got merit. And we should be paying attention to it because it stood the test of time. Numerous vast research has been done on it, and essentially the framework that it operates within is essentially unchanged, which is a very important thing. Now, what we'd like to do, first of all, is just share with you 3 emails, communications that were had halfway through last trimester from students who are in our enabling program. The purpose of this, it's the black bit that I want to illustrate in the 3 communications. This is the first student. Now, if you look in the black text, we see, rekindle the love of learning that I thought I'd lost. A new spark, boost my sense of capacity, ability, and purpose. Literally, you could take this out and stick it in a journal article about self-efficacy. We go to the student number 2. We had 2 students last trimester who were enrolled in a master's course. One of them had gained access through her previous experience. She'd never been to university, never studied online. So she came into our Pathways course initially just to see if she would be able to cope with it. And then when she found out she liked it, she then went on. But notice here at the bottom, she talks about skills, confidence, and aptitude to embark on these studies, and tools and mindset I need to succeed. And this has really helped me start my studies with a strong sense of belief in myself. We go to the 3rd student who is also a master's student, and she talked about what surprised me was not just the study skills, but learning about motivation, how to approach study, how to set goals and manage stress, and how to change my mindset to, I can do this. So what we have is a student voice that describes academic self-efficacy. They really didn't spend much time going, you taught me how to reference. You taught me how to write a paragraph, because that's all in the work that we do, but that's not the thing that changes their world. It's about their perception of themselves, their sense of efficacy to be able to get the job done. The key takeaways we see at this point, first of all, and these are my views, you can agree or disagree or like, enabling educators are primarily builders of students' academic self-efficacy. We may teach reading, writing, and arithmetic, but that's not what we're there for. Those things are the raw material, if you like, that we work with as we do the building of their academic self-efficacy. If you build their academic self-efficacy, you've done your job. Everything else after that, in my view, is largely gravy. And the second thing is, as I've already said, the content skills, academic literacies that we develop in them are what we work with to build their self-efficacy. But the primary goal is self-efficacy, because if we get that right, they will get the content and the skills that they need. Now, if you look at the literature on self-efficacy, even starting with Ben Dura, there are generally 4 sources of it proposed as where it comes from. The first one is relatively obvious, performance outcomes. Ben Dura called it mastery. Right, so it's their experience of mastery in some situation. Now, the mastery doesn't have to be in some highly challenging, rocket science situation. It just has to be in something that they did experience challenge in, but they still succeeded. The second area is vicarious experiences. Thirdly, physiological feedback. Actually, I'll go across here first. Verbal persuasion. It's influenced by the encouragement and discouragement pertaining to an individual's performance or their perception of their ability to perform. And lastly, physiological feedback is their experience of what happens. A person can do really well at something and have a positive experience. That was the greatest thing since sliced bread. But a person can do a really great job on something and have a really negative experience out of it for various reasons. Where the emotional experience of it comes from, and I'll be talking about this in a little bit as well, it largely comes from the social contextual factors that exist and the values that people assign to things. Performing well can scare people if it's outside their framework of understanding of who and what they are, just as performing badly can. So they're the 4 influences. They're the things we're trying to achieve in work we do with our students. If you read the language that Bandura uses, he talks about things like verbal persuasion. He uses the word exhortation. You don't sit there and talk boringly about what you're doing with your students and expect them to get excited. You have to be excited. If you aren't excited and communicating that in that mood, that feeling, then they will not be excited. Now, when it comes to vicarious experiences, he talks in terms of modelling, particularly symbolic modelling. That is, if a student is expected to be efficacious, then they have to model that on something. People model behaviour based on what they see in others. They define what the word efficacious means by what they see in others. And as we can expect, the main other they're going to get this from when they're in an enabling course is the enabling educators. So let us consider now this key graph which summarises the whole thing. What we're looking for out of our students is this final one, behaviour and performance. That's the end product. If they put in the study, they do the work, they do the study, they engage with the content, develop the skills through their own practice, they'll get the result, the academic results, students will pass, the university gets paid for the experience, everybody's happy. The problemo is that only comes if you develop their academic self-efficacy. So our focus as enabling educators is not on behaviour and performance, it's on self-efficacy. And that's what we have to consider now. How do we do that in practice? Now, all right, so that's the key takeaway, that the development of self-efficacy precedes behaviour. So when we start an enabling program, the focus has got to be on self-efficacy and we build that. And then as we go on, they will learn the behaviour they need built on a basis of self-efficacious belief systems. Now, what does it mean in terms of the andragogy that the educator needs to demonstrate? Now, these are just a few to illustrate the sorts of things that we need to do. Firstly, we need to provide them multiple opportunities to engage with appropriately challenging but attainable tasks, particularly during the transition period. If you've got a unit, and like ours, we do trimesters, so ours is about 13 weeks long. If you have a traditional unit, most units have 2 assessment tasks in them, one in the middle, one at the end. That's not a basis for developing academic self-efficacy if that's the only time that the student can engage with and demonstrate their mastery. In the first 4 to 6 weeks of any transitional education process, there must be multiple occasions in there where they can engage with an activity. I'm not going to call it assessment because I think it's demonstrations of learning rather than assessment, that they can engage with something where they can demonstrate their learning and then they can get a sense of mastery from it. Now, in enabling, that's a challenge because we have students in enabling that are very broad in their capacities. Some come in already knowing a lot of the work we do. Some come in, they're clueless. So we have to design a way of engaging with those students that caters to all of that so they can all experience mastery. No simple thing. Secondly, we as educators need to model highly self-efficacious behaviour. We need to promptly reply to email, and we provide supportive and prompt feedback. If they put something in, like a forum post or whatever, if we get back to them 3 days' time, you've just you just ruined the message you're trying to get across when you're talking about self-efficacy. If someone puts something in on Saturday morning, for me, I answer them on Saturday morning. Right? What we're demonstrating, if we expect them to work when they can fit it in as best they can, we need to model that same behaviour. That's my view anyway. When it comes to assessment, at UNE, we have a policy that says you've got 3 weeks to get assessment back. In enabling, that's ridiculous. Right? Prompt, reply, and feedback. And when we have in-person activities, we get there on time. We're never late, unless there's a disaster. Next, we are prepared to provide feedback on, if possible, on multiple occasions for a single task. You don't move a person from wherever they happen to be to wherever you need them in one jump. It usually doesn't happen. That means we've got to be prepared to do drafting and working with them. And we don't try to move them from where they are to the end in one step. We take it as a series of small steps. So we provide feedback to them. And we move them as far as they can go from wherever they happen to be. If you try to move them too far, it gets you the exact opposite result you're after, because they will not achieve they won't achieve it, and they'll probably have a negative experience. You can only move them far enough so that they are still able to attain the move. During the initial transition period, we must be able to be positive and supportive, even in situations where student performance is not at the level appropriate for academic or tertiary study. And this is a tough one, because some of the stuff you receive, the level that it's presented at is not good. But you still have to be able to be positive and take them from wherever they are and move them forward. It is fascinating to sit in a meeting with a bunch of academics who work in undergraduate and postgraduate study, and this one in particular is the one that often jumps out and bites me. They are often very negative about the students and their capabilities and their performance levels. In enabling, we can't do that, as far as I'm concerned. And lastly, we need to interact with students in a manner that evokes multiple experiences of positive emotional arousal, that builds the students' belief in their own capacity. Positive emotional arousal. It's not their job when they enter enabling to be positively emotionally aroused. That's what we are paid to do. And if we don't do that, we can't expect them to develop the confidence and attitude, positive attitudes we require of them to be successful academically. Now, that's what we've got to do as educators. Now, that's no simple thing. If you threw that up in front of most academics, your standard academics in a university, they'd probably laugh at you. What I want to consider now, though, is what is the belief system and the identity system of a person, an enabling educator who's going to try and do this sort of thing. Now, we've used this model. We published it in 2015, a version of it. This one comes from 2019 when it was upgraded a little bit. This is based on identity theory. And you'll see that the things we talk about here are also very similar to what prompts academic self-efficacy. But what we're interested in here is, how does an educator an enabling educator, how do they maintain their behaviour system to support the students, even in the face of challenging situations, like when people put in rubbish assessment, when 30% of your students don't do anything and you're working and they just won't engage. That can be challenging. You need an identity and belief system that's able to support you through those struggles. First of all, your identity, beliefs and values drive the performance of the role. If you look at the way a person does a job, it's based on the beliefs and attitudes they have about what they're trying, who they are and what they're doing. Take a a goth for argument's sake. You see this crazy person with crazy hair walking down the street. They do that because they understand that as the role associated with who they think they are. The andragogical behaviours of an educator are driven by their identity belief system. Once you form the role, perform some aspect of the role, which is all the behaviours you have to engage in to be this enabling educator, that will give you rise to short-term emotions. I do something, I get a piece of assessment in, it's a great job, I go, yay, oh, haven't I done a great job? Something happens, I negatively experience it because for whatever reason it's just not good. It's a negative response. What that does on an ongoing basis is it feeds into the way you are committed to an identity. People's connection to a given identity ebbs and flows based upon their experience of performing the role and their emotional response to that. We are emotional creatures, just as our students are. This is a theory we use for our students at the University of New England, because we work on the assumption that we are trying to get them to see themselves as a university student. I'm a valid university student who can achieve and get a degree. A part of that identity is their beliefs around their self-efficacy. There are other things as well, but that's a very key one. And it's exactly the same for the enabling educator. And the important thing is, around we go again. It's a cyclical process. That's why there are times when we are very committed. We're really happy doing our job. We love it. But there are other times when we don't. I've had enough of this. I'm going to go off into the corner with my bat and my ball, and I'm going to have a me time because I'm just jack of it. All of that is explainable through this process. The key thing we need to think about as enabling academics is it all takes place within the social and cultural context of a university. A student-focused, I think that's the next, hang on. I want you to consider the environment we work in as enabling academics in a university. Enabling students may not look like successful students. The problem is there's an extensive amount of research that says that our expectations as educators influence how the students see themselves. If you want a student to see themselves as a highly efficacious student, we must see it first, whether they are or not. Our belief system must be we can take any one of these people and turn them into a highly capable, efficacious university student. It doesn't matter where they're coming from. That's our belief system. Our academic culture can be rather challenging to the enabling academic as well, because the idea of publish or perish, if you're engaging in these practices that we're talking about here, it is a big job. It's hard work. Your capacity to publish and have a big, long list of publications over the next 10 years, if you do what we're talking about, is going to be challenged. And this can be a problem because it can challenge our capacity to actually engage in it, because we may perceive it as a disadvantage. Likewise, when you talk to your fellow academics, the whole basis upon what we're talking about can be a challenge. Some of them will look at you and think you're bonkers, that we're here for the students' benefit. And I'm going to work hard and I'm going to get my assessment. But you should see people look at us when we get assessment back within a day of the student submitting it, and the end of trimester thing is due on the Friday, and they're all marked by the Monday. They think you're bonkers, and they can not like it because they think they experience that negatively because it puts an onus upon them to do it as well. And they can be quite strongly negative about it. So we have to do what we're doing in the face of this culture that can be somewhat challenging. Right? And we have to understand, whether we like it or not, the culture we operate in, the social environment, will influence our identity beliefs about our students and our emotional response when we perform the role. Now, the key factor of all of this for both the student and the academic doing what it is they need to do to enhance academic self-efficacy is that Learning is an emotional experience, and we have to actively work to make it emotional in the way we speak, our behaviour, the way we run meetings, the way we run Zoom sessions, whatever it is. We have to be able to create an positive emotional experience for our students. Has anyone got any questions about the theoretical side of things that I've presented up to this point? Haven't. Someone might have to tell me if something comes up, because I haven't got the chat up. I can't find it. Nothing happening?
Nothing in the chat.
Beauty,
Rob.
thank you. Now, I'll stop sharing and I'll pass over to Trish, who will take it from here.
You're on mute, Trish.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. How are you feeling after that little tsunami of information? Going well? Hopefully you got a coffee with you and you're ready to go. So very good. Thanks, Ange. I've got a couple of caveats before I start today. My first caveat is I wish upon a star that the upper management at universities truly realised the value of the enabling education, full stop. The people in it, the process of it, the actions, and where people come and land in their university to finish degrees and postgraduate work. So I don't think that's there a lot of the time. This is after being in 5 different regional universities over that last nearly 20 years. And as Rob said, yes, I do appreciate getting fantastic student feedback, 4.5 to 5 out of the whole last 20 years. Fantastic. My biggest concentration, though, goes to where my retention is and the unit evaluations, because that really tells me more about the whole situation. So what I'm about to tell you is my experience, and I just wanted to put this second caveat in there that I really realize whatever I've done over this last couple of decades, I do not expect anyone else to do it. I'm just letting you know what has worked for me and why I've apparently got these great reviews on the unit and retention of up to 94%. On average, 80 to 94. That's, yeah. When I first got to the University of Sunshine Coast and I'd finished my biomedical science degree, and then I went and they offered me a master's in adult learning, which I did my master's thesis in self-efficacy and the teacher's perspective, interestingly enough. When I first was offered the 101 group, which was the only required unit, there was an 80% attrition. And in one semester, I flipped that on its head to an 80% retention because of one real reason. The people that were coming in to a unit that was not costing them anything, that had previously often very poor educational experiences, I had to make them want to be there. So I really took the first 6 weeks to set up an educational psychology process that included all this academic self-efficacy to start to get their minds into a place where they felt cared for, comfortable, and understood in the liminal or proximal zone of their learning. Now, this was no easy task, because at that stage, all those years ago, we were looking at a huge increase per trimester, or in that case, it was semester, and it was about 500 students. And by the time I'd finished there, we were on 5 different campuses, and we had a VC that did not want anything online on purpose to support this. But I did find a little way around that. Because I had so many different instructors in there, and they were hard to get to train over certain periods of time for the casuals, I set up, with Rob writing the program, I had an eLeap grant, and I created the 24/7 tutor. And what we did is we put this online just as a support process so that it created continuity across all the circumstances of the campuses. And even though lectures were happening on the main campus and they were recorded and the tutes were all available on Blackboard, this thing just sort of brought it all together. And it was heavily scaffolded at the start, and that scaffold diminished over time over the several assessment tasks. That was really well received, really well received. And so I started to get this idea that no matter where you taught, because I've now taught at quite a few different places, and even though it wasn't always enabling, it was still with non-traditional students. For example, down at the University of Tasmania in Wicking, in the dementia care, we'd have students coming in on a Cert 3 in a free unit, and I had to sort of get their situation up to a point where they could go straight into studying things based on neurophysiology. So this liminal proximal zone is often put to the side now because it seems like it's a little bit retro, but it's really important when we look at enabling units, because as Rob said, some people come in and I've had people leaving, not even finishing year 9, who have now finished postgraduate units. So it's not about smarts, it's about the experience that they've had at school, whether they've been left by the wayside because of either the treatment they've experienced or what they've had to put up with at home, or whatever the circumstances are. It does not matter. What I say to them as soon as they enter is, this is the line in the sand, that was the past, this is now. And one of my greatest parts of my personality, and one of the worst parts of my personality, is that I probably care too much. So I offer all my students, whether I'm being paid full-time or 0.5, which is currently, I offer all my students a 7:30 to 7:30, 7 days a week ability to email me and get an email back virtually immediately. And that's the minimum. So yeah, there are times when I'm still answering at 10 o'clock. Now, I would not expect any other person to do that. But what this gives me is, in the first few weeks, it gives people a safe space to come in and ask that question that they're not comfortable doing in a Zoom, that they're not comfortable doing under any other format. And they can send me a question. They're adult learners. They have to fit the study in around work, family, so on and so forth. This gives them that little bit of opportunity to fit this in, get an answer, and move on. And as Rob said previously, if we wait too long to answer, we've often lost them. And what I find is when I've done this postgraduate study in the, at different levels, I look at different theoretical processes such as growth mindset, self-determination, motivation theory, adult learning. There are all aspects within those that are either connected to academic self-efficacy or mirror of academic self-efficacy. So all those things can be wound in to what you teach to allow for a more holistic connection with the students. So with my students, I want to give them the full view of what this is going to be like, because it is literally running the analogy of running a marathon. You know, a lot of these people are adults, they've got families, or they're caring for parents, or whatever the circumstances are, and they've got to know that they need to take care of their health, their sleep, they need to be scheduled, organized, they need to have a growth mindset. And so each one of the lectures on a Monday night in the Zoom is all about revving them up in one part or another. And then the PowerPoint goes up alongside the Zoom so that they can have that associated information. And then everything I do constantly reinforces this. Now, one thing I'd say I have a slight advantage on when I've had this teaching over the last 20 years is I entered university as an adult, as a single mother with 2 small children. But there were no pathways. There was no enabling. what this offered me was a couple of bridging courses that I kind of caught up with that was taught by a couple of postgraduates who really did not want to be there. So I'd been through year 12, didn't enjoy school that much, felt like there was very little direction, support, or care. And so then I had a couple of kids, and then I went back in and I wanted to choose the hardest degree I could find. So I picked a biomedical degree, and I had to work out a way to do this. So I use this story to let people know that no matter your circumstances, this is what you can do, and this is how you can do it. So 2 years in, I also had an elderly sick mother. So, you know, no matter what, whatever reasons they come up with, I can come back with, this is how we actually work it out. So I'm huge on goals. I'm huge on scheduling. And I also bring up very early that many, many people are fearful of failure. That's the ordinary thing we think about. But as Rob indicated before, I think more people are fearful of success. Because if we fail at something, virtually nothing changes in our life. We just go back to the same old status quo. But if we are successful, our whole world changes, including all of that for our significant others. And it is highly confrontational for a lot of people to see that success in someone and to see them changing, and the rest of the group is staying the same. So I throw out these little grenades every once in a while to make people sort of sit up and listen and think, what is my approach to this? What is my connection to this? What is my motivation for this? What am I here for? So this trimester, I've actually strategized putting up a student agreement, and they put in their goals and I put in my expectations and they sign off on it. And it's worked quite well. But no matter what, we as an enabling group of educators are working with people who do not have any money attached to this because their units are free. And for a lot of people, that's an indicator that whether it's worthwhile or not. So I have to remove that straight away with the concept of how much is your time worth? How much are you paid at work? What do you believe your time is worth? Because this is the worthwhile time that you've chosen to enroll in. And I also put that self-efficacy and self-responsibility back on them with locus of control, that they chose to enroll in here. So what is their motivation? And then moving on to goals. A lot of people come in and say, I want to do a degree. And that's all fine and dandy, but that isn't a goal. That's an idea. So what I work on very closely with them is the connection with why is this idea important to them, and exactly how will they go about achieving this. So I go back to my own experience and I say to them, before I entered my degree, I promised myself that I would never miss a tute or a lecture. I would never ask for an extension, and I wanted a distinction average. And I got all that. Why? Because all of those things were in my control. And I promised myself that that was my attitude, and I asked them to set those hows up with themselves. They must get the how and the why, and that is all connected in their assessment. So the module information is all there. It's built to be short, sharp, clear, supported, PowerPoints, videos, all the rest of it's there. That's fine. The andragogy, as you've seen, is trying to be connected, emotional, caring, powerful, available, and connected. And I mark as soon as they come in, it's straight back to them. Mark, feedback, bang, go. And if I don't like what I see, I revert it back to a draft and I ask for more. I've been classified as firm but fair. But more importantly to me is how the assessment is set up, because that's what a lot of people are looking for. They come straight in, they want to look at the assessment, and they forget about all the learning part of the process. So I try to hide the assessment within the learning to some degree, and we are doing the teaching of the learning and the assessment all in one. So if they really click with the learning, the assessment is high, the marks are high because they've listened and they've followed the process. I'm a huge believer in templates, and there's a lot of things to remember in academia. And when we're in here for a long time, we forget. So I always put in a title page and a reference list, and I start them off with references, and I support the structure of an essay, and I lay it out and I give them options to choose from. But what I've done in this trimester is in the first task, they're given an IT task to make sure that, A, they can handle the online learning, which is really important, obviously. But the second task is a note-taking task, and it's real time in the Zoom, even though it's recorded, and they have to take notes from 2 subject areas. And once they take the notes, they then have to summarize them and then upload that as a task. But then they choose one of the subject areas and they take those notes in the summary and they start turning that into a essay plan. That template is available for them and they can start sorting those notes, and a Zoom is set up to show them exactly how that is formatted and a paragraph structure and what's happening with referencing and so on and so forth. And then what that turns into is from task 2 to task 3A, the plan, it turns into task 3B, the essay. And so that connectivity over 1, 2, 3A, 3B means that by the time they get to task 4, they are clearly ready to walk into a much more successful way of setting up a task, even though a template is available for them in task 4 as well. So the connectivity of the assessment and the constant building really adds to that constant mastery, especially if you have that strong level of communication and that strong level of marking behind it. So most of my marking, I will feed back things like, I'm proud of you, or this has been a fantastic job, or you've really developed this well. I try to use language where they can take it. And when Rob was speaking about that negative emotion that might pop in because they've had a previously poor experience, I'm trying to avert that by putting the language in there that's going to help lift that. So I do find that I'm proud of you tends to really resonate with these people, which is, I think, lovely because it's so simple. What else was I going to talk about? I think more than anything, it's about making sure that people understand that someone on the other side cares that they're there, cares that they put the assessment in. So we have this great email program at UNE called Atrium. And Atrium allows the email to ping their personal email, and then there's a link and it brings them back to their UNE email. Because in the past, I've always really struggled with communications because not all of them have checked their university email. So by pinging this email and allowing them to realize that there is an email for them, it really brings a lot of people back in, because someone is there asking, you haven't put assessment in. What's happening with this? You've been reverted back to a draft. I need more information. And you're constantly reinforcing the idea that we want you there, that you're an important person, and that we want you to succeed, and we want these outcomes to be great. Now, obviously, not all outcomes are great in this, but I would have to say the major percentage of students that I've seen over this last 20 years, if you've got them there by census date, most of them will be successful and move through to a degree. So we then from 101 have a 102, and that 102 in enabling runs alongside an elective, and they get one of the units from their degree connected to the enabling unit where they get it for free. The percentage that we're getting at the moment, because 102 travels right alongside parallel to this, is up to 94% retention and success, which is astonishing. But what it means is that they're in their elective, they're dipping their toe in the water, they're really having a good look and saying, am I going to do this? But they've got the support of 102 running right along beside them with the person that just got them through 101. So this model, which Rob set up, has just worked so beautifully, and it just gives those people in the elective a chance to step back into 102 and do a little bit of assessment and ask questions and work away. And one of the tasks actually allows them to take one of the tasks from their elective and do a full assessment breakdown on it. It's one of the best models I've seen that allows for continual support over an elongated period of time, because it takes quite a while to build this identity, to build this confidence again, and to build that sense of self as a tertiary student, and to have that full belief that when they step into the degree, the money and time and effort that it's going to take is going to be worthwhile and a successful outcome for them. So the process I've seen over those 5 different universities, I could not speak any more highly of University of Tasmania. Their Wicking program in dementia care is absolutely astonishingly amazing, and the group of people that they've got working in there. But whether it's USQ or Sunshine Coast or here at UNE, everyone's putting their spin on it, and all things in the wash coming out. Most things work pretty well, but the bottom line is it is not a culture where this sort of process that I'm describing is well accepted. It simply is not by the upper management and not by your colleagues in a lot of cases. Now, maybe some of them are. That's great. I hope you do come across people who go, I can see why this is important. But when you're looking at enabling students and first-year students, you need the absolute best teaching practice, care factor, and communications with high-level support that's going to get them. By the time they get into 2nd and 3rd year, it is content-driven. It is usually pretty well set up, but not the enabling and the first year. It's got to be the foundations that is laid down, and it's got to be robust. And for me personally, the way that I find that this works for people students I come across is having the care factor, having the quick communications that goes on for a long period of time, and having that quick feedback. I would have to say they're probably 3 of the major processes. But what has surprised me is my sort of fairly quaint lectures on things like U 2.0, how to get your best potentiality. I'm a real Bronfenbrenner fan of this, and how to make the best of every situation and building that strong resilience and caring enough about you to make this work. I try to take my care factor and let them take the role with it, because I'm not going to be there. So they need to grow their own resilience and care factor. So in a retro sense, probably showing my age, I do really commit to things like vision boards and telling them to make sure that they change their goals and keep it dynamic and keep it moving forward. But having things right in front of them and laying out things like templates and showing the boundaries of what is required and the expectations of what academics they're going to be encountering in the degree. I'm always trying to lift the process one step at a time and then reinforcing it, and lifting every time and then reinforcing it. And so that goes to the feedback, the assessment, the andragogy, the modules, the Zooms, the lecture, and the communications. It is a huge puzzle, and it is not an easy puzzle, but it's a worthwhile puzzle, because a lot of these people come out of this. And like I say, some people haven't finished year 9. They've now done postgraduate study, or they've won things like the Vice Chancellor's Medal, and they've gone on to create their own incredible business. A lot of people haven't gone on to do a degree. So what? They've gone on to get a better job. No matter what the circumstances are, the enabling process holds an incredibly important structure, and we are so fortunate in Australia to have this opportunity to be led by the government, to be supported of students who have not done a traditional sense. But guess what? Tradition doesn't mean unsuccessful. And tradition can often be unsuccessful. A lot of people who have done pathways have noted people who have done a traditional entry into university struggle because they haven't had the pathway experience. So all I can say is good on you, every single one of you, for doing what you do, because no matter whether we do it my way, Rob's way, your way, whatever way, as long as we care and as long as we give people that time and energy and some excitement and some drive, the rest of it will take care of itself. Anyway, I hope that was okay. And thanks very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Trish. That was amazing. Yeah, you've got getting some rounds of applause there. We have 5 minutes left, so I'll open the floor for any questions. We got any questions in the? We don't have any questions in the Q&A. We don't have any questions in the chat yet. I have one question for you, Trish, which is like, it sounds like you give obviously amazing support to your students, but just recognizing the neoliberal systems that we work within, as you noted and Rob noted, we have to be aware of that cultural context. But what would your advice be for those of us who are in this space and been enabling for a while to avoid burnout while still being able to provide that level of support?
That's a really good question. Really good question, Ange.
Can I have a?
You can have a crack, Rob.
I'll throw a rock in the water. It is the traditional balanced load that academics are on. So you get like in our case, it's 3 trimesters and a balanced load. You do 2 and you have 1 off where you do your research and whatever. I'm on a teaching focused role, which means I teach 5 and have 1 off. Like, that is ridiculous when we're trying to do the job we're doing. My advice is that you need to be able to step away from what we're doing and go and do something else. Go and do some research. Go and talk to somebody else and just do something different. If you stay in the trench in here, it is going to be, and you stay there for too long, it will do you an injury, I can tell you now. Yeah, I think every one of us needs to get on a plane and cruise boat on a regular basis and head off. In the early days, Trish and I used to go to the best bet. We used to go to the education conference at Christmas time in Hawaii. It's a cracker. You go over there, you do your presentation, you spend a week in Hawaii and you ride as rain. It is really challenging. And I'd also suggest in our purpose, every trimester, the first 6 weeks, in week 7 thereabouts, you need to take a break. Anybody who does enabling this kind of teaching for any length of time where they are that emotionally invested, you can't do it forever. And you've got to go do it somewhere else. Yeah. Amanda loves that conference as well.
That's some really good advice. And I know a lot of my academics of whom are in the digital room today work back to back, like semesters and summer and things like that.
Up at the University of the Sunshine Coast, we did 13 semesters straight. And that was with research, with qualifications, and we were still cruising at that point. But then again, I was a lot younger.
We were a lot younger.
So what you're saying is youth. We need to have youth.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We need to go Brian Johnson for sure. What I think to some degree is I still get excited. I mean, at the same time you go, but every time you start a trimester, you've got to think of all the potential that's in there. So I feel like I have to show up. So for me, that's the motivation, because this is a new group of people who have put their faith in me. That's how I roll. But that's just probably because of my past, my history coming in like that. It is tiring. I think more than anything, being able to tell yourself it's okay to be tired. It's okay to feel a bit frustrated at times, but there's a whole lot of people out there depending on you.
Yeah, that's a great point. I would always remind myself of the same thing. Start of every semester, it's like we've got a fresh batch, they're coming in all bright-eyed, and it's our role there to support them, and to build that self-efficacy, which Rob, I thank you for really walking us through that importance of self-efficacy. That's our role in building that, and that's quite close to my heart too. So we've hit the 9 o'clock mark now, well, 9 o'clock Perth time, 11 o'clock Queensland time. So thank you again, Trish and Rob. That was really amazing presentation, and thanks, Trish, for really breaking it down in terms of your own practice. Lovely blend of theory and practice in this presentation. So I thank you all for coming. This recording, as I said at the beginning, will be up on our socials next week and on our website as well. So thanks again, and have a wonderful day.
Lovely to meet you all.
Thanks, Nancy. See you later.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.